Hello, and welcome back to Workbench Wednesdays. In this episode, we are talking about Vector Network Analyzers, or VNAs. And to be clear, these have nothing to do with computer networks. In this context, network means a group of components or elements forming a circuit. Ultra and super high frequency VNAs measure those components, characterize amplifiers, and a bunch of other things. There are a lot of technical details behind how a VNA works and what it is measuring. In this video, we will use this PicoVNA that Pico Technology sent me to look at the kind of measurements that they make, we'll get into how they work, and at the end, I'll give you some basic how-to stuff. With that, let's go measure. FYI, what I cover in this video applies to most VNA tools, even though I am focused on VNAs capable of gigahertz measurements. Because they are a complex instrument, this video is more of an overview of what they can do and not a step-by-step guide. If you would like more information on the PicoVNA, or you have general VNA questions, follow the link below to the Element 14 community. VNAs have ports which act as an input, output, or both. This unit is a 2-port device, but 1, 4, and many more also exist. The more ports you have, the more aspects of a circuit or network you can measure. Getting to a measurement example, let's check out this PCB trace. Unlike a DMM, a VNA sweeps across frequency while measuring how much signal goes through it and how much gets reflected back. These two frequency domain graphs describe how the trace works with frequency content up to 6 GHz. Not only that, with a measurement called time domain reflectometry, we see how the trace responds to a fast pulse in the time domain. This measurement can show impedance discontinuities and where they are physically located. As an example, watch what happens as my finger couples into the trace. Another option is to plot the results on a special RF graph called a Smith chart. These show impedance and reactance of the network across frequency, among other things. Looking at all of these graphs, we can see that this PCB trace is fairly well controlled and is, for the most part, a characteristic 50 ohms. You might also hear about scalar network analyzers. These only measure magnitude with frequency, and today they are mostly replaced by spectrum analyzers with a tracking generator. A vector network analyzer measures magnitude and phase at individual frequency points. One thing to realize is that all of these graphs and measurements are constructed from the same set of sweeps. VNAs are part hardware and part software with a ton of math in between. Because of that, VNAs are very different from test tools like oscilloscopes or standalone spectrum analyzers. Vector network analyzers are almost entirely used for characterization, not debug, in both the lab and in production. Next, let's take a look at how a VNA's hardware functions. VNAs come in all kinds of different shapes and sizes, with price tags as little as $100 all the way up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. But fundamentally, they work on the same concept. A variable frequency sine wave generator connects to a receiver through a power divider. A coupler connects the external port to either the generator or another receiver. The other port has the same hardware connected to the same signal source through an RF switch. These ports connect to the device under test, DUT, or DUT. A DUT's inputs and outputs are also called ports. By the way, if your DUT has more ports like a differential transmission line, which has 4, then you may need a 4-port VNA. A VNA can measure a signal going from port 1 through the DUT into the VNA's port 2, and from port 2 into port 1. Because of the couplers, it can also measure the signal that gets reflected back from a generator port. At multiple frequency points, it switches through these configurations, measuring the ratio of the sine waves going in and out of the ports, which creates a matrix called scattering parameters. Also called S parameters, these fully describe the behavior of a linear device across a frequency range. For example, S11 is how much signal gets reflected back, while S21 is how much signal goes through the DUT. And this is what S parameters look like as a text file. This format is called Touchstone and is supported by many RF analysis applications. RF measurement tools and simulations depend on having accurate S parameters, which the VNA is best known for doing. But to take advantage of its accuracy, we have to establish a proper reference plane before we can start making measurements. When I say the word calibration, you probably think of the annual calibration that most instruments have to go through. In this context, calibration means removing error terms from a measurement, which actually turns out we have to calibrate for each measurement setup. On the front of the VNA is a port. If we add a cable to that port, its parasitics degrade the signal and adds error to the measurement. The good news is, if you have a device that you know the characteristics of, you can measure that to remove the errors. We call those calibration standards. An SOLT kit contains a short, an open, a load, and a through. You might see them as discrete components, or as a mechanically combined device, or even as elements on a PCB itself. The absolute accuracy of your measurements depend on the quality of the cables and calibration kit that you use. So 2 things to know about. 1, the more expensive they are, usually the better. And most VNAs do not come with a calibration set. You have to either already have one or buy it separately. Okay? Now let's go see what this calibration looks like. In the PicoVNA software, we start with a default configuration. Then we tell the software what calibration kit we are using for each of the ports. The mechanical set I am using has a serial number. The vendor provided a USB drive which contains the coefficients for this specific device, which is the same file that I loaded. Good calibration standards come with cal data. Not so good standards don't. Now we need to set up the frequency sweep parameters. Here I'm setting the VNA to sweep from about 3 MHz to about 6 GHz. The sweep points determine the frequency step size. The more points, the more data to plot, but the longer the sweep takes. Next, we select the type of calibration needed. If you only plan to do one port or S11 and S21 measurements like TDR, then you can get away with fewer steps. In this case, I want a full calibration, so I select a non-insertable DUT, which means the DUT has the same type of connector on both of its ports. Now comes the fun part. First, we'll calibrate with a load and open. The cables from port 1 and 2 connect to the cal standard as the software indicates. Once connected, the VNA can take a measurement. Now we physically swap the connections and make another measurement. Then that process gets repeated for short and open. After that, we can do one for a barrel called a through. Now, once that super quick process is done, simply click Apply Cal. Oh, and remember to save your calibration. Over time and temperature, the VNA will drift, so let it warm up before you do a cal. And even though you can save a calibration indefinitely, for the most accurate measurement, you'll want to redo the cal every couple of hours. By the way, some VNA vendors offer electronic calibration units that automate that entire process. But not everyone, and the ones that do, are expensive. So, with all of that work, what have we accomplished? We moved the measurement reference plane from the front of the analyzer to the end of the cable. In other words, the calibration removed the errors introduced by our cable and its SMA connectors. Now we can connect the VNA to our discrete filter and make our first actual measurement. And here is its response. Focusing on S21, we can see that it rolls off very quickly. The markers say around 240 MHz. Also noticing that most of the sweep is filtered out by this filter. So we want to zoom in, and to do that, we have to change the sweep. But changing the sweep parameters invalidates the calibration. Fortunately, this software can interpolate the cal so that we can still make some measurements. Finally, we can see that this filter's 3 dB point is around 246 MHz. However, there is still a potential problem in this measurement. We established the reference plane at the cable's connector, not at the first component of the actual filter. There are multiple techniques to move your measurement reference plane from the connector to the actual DUT. In other words, we can remove the effects of the PCB trace itself. Now heads up, this stuff gets really deep into VNA tribal knowledge, so this section is very much an overview or demo of these techniques. One method would be to use the PCB itself as our calibration standard to remove the effects of the trace. This demo board has a short, open, load, and through for this purpose. If you decide to go that route, you do have to be able to characterize those structures, because you need to know their characteristics in order to remove their error. The best and most difficult method is using specialized probes. A slightly easier method is to use software that simulates a PCB's S parameters. Pico Technology provided a generalized S parameter for this PCB design. We can use that to de-embed the trace effects on both port 1 and 2. De-embed is the opposite of embed. What I mean is we are mathematically removing the embedded effects of an element, or in this case, the two PCB traces, which effectively moves our measurement reference plane closer to the DUT. The result is this response. The yellow is the original measurement, and the blue is the de-embedded measurement. The magnitude response looks pretty similar since the PCB trace is such low loss. The phase plot, however, shows a shift because we mathematically move the reference plane from the connectors to the filter components. De-embedding is the most accurate method, but it relies entirely on having good S parameters, which can be difficult to get. There are two other options that have a little bit less accuracy. One is to measure a through trace and remove its effects with waveform math. This process is called normalization and is good for some measurements. The other is to assume the PCB is a well-behaved dielectric with consistent permittivity. There you can specify a length in millimeters to ignore. That method only works in cases like this where you have like a test fixture with the SMA and the trace. Now again, the topic of de-embedding is huge. I just wanted to give you a glimpse of what you have to think about when making VNA measurements, because you almost always have to remove the effects of a fixture. Or I guess you could ignore them. Before closing, we need to talk about the proper handling of RF connectors. On the front of the PicoVNA, and most VNAs for that matter, are N-type connectors. These are extremely robust and good up to 18 GHz. For frequencies in the 6 and 8 GHz range, 3.5mm connectors are usually fine, which means now I need to explain the difference between 3.5mm and SMA. SMA connectors are exceptionally common. The confusing part is that their inner diameter is 3.5mm. The connectors we call 3.5mm look like an SMA, but are far more precise and expensive. The visible difference is that SMA has a piece of Teflon around the center conductor, while 3.5mm connectors do not. This 3.5mm cable costs about $80, and it's only a couple of inches long. The main reason I bring this up is that you should never mate an SMA to a proper 3.5mm, because you'll damage the 3.5mm. Speaking of damage, for any RF connector, always twist the side with the nut. You must resist the temptation to twist the other side. Doing so can and will damage that conductor. Also notice that I'm using this fancy torque wrench. These are very important for two reasons. First, it prevents damaging the connectors, and second, it provides repeatability in your measurements. Brass and stainless steel fittings have different maximum torques. If mixing types, then go with the max torque for brass. If you do not have a torque wrench, then go barely past finger tight. Pico Technology includes this tool in their kit, but I still recommend a torque wrench. Also, minimize the number of connector changes. Each adapter adds delay and ultimately will need to be calibrated out. Last, keep your connectors clean, especially the ground threads. It only takes a tiny bit of IPA and an electronics grade cotton swab. Make sure they are dry and that there is no cotton left over before you make them to a connector. The big takeaway here is treat these connectors with care. Twist the nut, use a torque wrench, and keep them clean. Well, believe it or not, that was a quick look at the basics of using a VNA. Even so, I barely showed de-embedding. We didn't measure any active amplifiers or make a 1 dB compression measurement or talk about how to power devices with a bias T supply or even get into all the graphs that can be displayed. So if you would like to see more, let us know over on the Element 14 community. There you can find links to the PicoVNA and ask VNA questions while you're there. By the way, even if you are not in the market for this particular VNA, check out its user manual. It contains a really good VNA primer that is worth reading. There's a link on the community. As always, thank you for watching. For now, it is time for me to get back to phase coherent measurements on my electronics workbench.